The annual Martinez family reunion was held at Riverside Park, same as every year for the past decade. Folding tables covered with mismatched tablecloths, coolers full of beer and soda, and the smell of barbecue filling the air. Kids ran around playing tag while adults clustered in their usual groups, catching up on a year's worth of gossip. I arrived at 2 p.m., parking my modest Honda Civic between my cousin's new BMW and my aunt's Mercedes SUV. Nothing had changed about my appearance. Same jeans and polo shirt I'd worn to family events for years. Same casual demeanor that everyone had come to associate with their struggling niece. As I walked toward the main gathering area, carrying a store-bought potato salad, I could already hear the familiar conversations starting up around me. "Oh, there's Isabella," my Aunt Rosa whispered to my mother. "Still driving that old car, I see." "At least she came," Mom replied. "I was worried she might be too embarrassed after the whole job situation." The job situation they were referring to was my supposed unemployment over the past 2 years. What my family didn't know was that I'd been anything but unemployed. I was Isabella Martinez, founder and CEO of Pacific Real Estate Group, one of the fastest-growing property management companies on the West Coast. It had started small, a single apartment building I'd purchased with savings from my previous job as a property analyst. Over the past 5 years, I'd built an empire of residential and commercial properties spanning 3 states. My company now managed over 2,000 units and owned prime real estate worth $3.2 billion. But my family didn't know any of this. They saw what I wanted them to see. Their relative who lived modestly, drove an old car and seemed to be figuring things out well into her 30s. "Isabella." My Uncle Roberto's voice boomed across the park as I approached the main group. At 55, Roberto was the unofficial patriarch of our extended family since my grandfather's passing. He owned a small construction company and never missed an opportunity to remind everyone about his business success. "Uncle Roberto," I smiled, giving him the expected hug. "Good to see you, Mija. How are things going?" His tone already carried that slightly condescending note I'd grown accustomed to at these gatherings. "Things are good. Can't complain. Still working on those little projects of yours?" This was Roberto's way of dismissing my apparent career struggles without being directly cruel. In his mind, I was someone who did little projects, freelance work, consulting gigs, nothing substantial. Something like that. My cousin Miguel approached with a beer in hand, grinning. "Isabella. I was just telling everyone about my promotion at the bank. Regional manager now. Big salary bump, company car, the works." "That's great, Miguel. Congratulations." "Thanks. What about you?" "Still figuring things out." Before I could answer, my Aunt Carmen joined the conversation. "Isabella, honey, Miguel was just saying his bank is hiring. Maybe you could apply for something entry-level? It's never too late to start building a real career." I felt the familiar sting of their well-meaning condescension. These people loved me, but they'd decided years ago that I was the family member who couldn't quite get her life together. "I appreciate the thought, Aunt Carmen, but I'm doing fine with my current work." Roberto laughed, not unkindly but with the tone of someone who thought he knew better. "Mija, doing fine isn't enough anymore. You need stability, benefits, a real future. These little freelance things you do, they're not sustainable." "And still living in that tiny apartment?" Roberto continued, his voice getting louder as other family members started gathering around our conversation. "When will you get a real job and move somewhere decent? You're almost 35, Isabella." The circle of family members had grown. I could see my parents watching from across the picnic area, probably hoping this conversation wouldn't turn into another family intervention. "The apartment serves my needs," I said calmly. "But it's so small," chimed in my cousin Sophia. "I saw it last Christmas. It's like a college dorm room. Don't you want something better?" "Like what?" "Like a real house. A career you can be proud of. A life that actually goes somewhere." Roberto was getting more animated now, playing to his audience. "Look at Miguel, bank manager. Look at Sophia, she's got her own marketing firm. Even your younger cousin Mario just bought a house in the suburbs." I nodded politely as Roberto continued his impromptu lecture about responsibility and adult expectations. Around us, other family members were listening with expressions that ranged from sympathetic to embarrassed on my behalf. "Uncle Roberto," I said finally, "can I ask you something?" "Of course, Mija. How's business been for your construction company? His chest puffed out with pride. Very good. We just landed a big contract for a new apartment complex downtown. 60 units, very upscale. Best project we've ever had. That's wonderful. What's the address? 1247 Harborview Drive. Beautiful location right by the waterfront. The property management company is paying top dollar for quality work. I reached into my purse and pulled out my business card holder, a simple black leather case that I'd carried for years but never had occasion to use at family gatherings. That's interesting, I said, selecting a card. I'm familiar with that project. Really? You know someone involved? You could say that. I handed him the card. Roberto took it casually, probably expecting to see something like, Isabella Martinez freelance consultant, or independent contractor. Instead he read, Isabella Martinez, founder and CEO, Pacific Real Estate Group. His face went through several expressions in rapid succession, confusion, disbelief, and then something approaching shock. What is this? He asked, his voice suddenly much quieter. My business card. But, Pacific Real Estate Group, that's the company that hired your construction firm for the Harborview project. The color drained from Roberto's face as the implications hit him. You're my client. I'm your boss's boss, actually. Pacific Real Estate owns the Harborview property. We hired the development company that hired your construction firm. The silence that fell over our little group was complete. You could hear kids laughing in the distance and the sizzle of meat on the barbecue, but our circle had gone dead quiet. Miguel was the first to find his voice. Isabella, what exactly does Pacific Real Estate Group do? We're a property management and development company. We own and manage residential and commercial real estate across California, Oregon, and Washington. How many properties? Asked Sophia, her voice barely above a whisper. Currently, we manage about 2,000 residential units and own approximately 150 commercial properties. Roberto was still staring at the business card. Isabella, the Harborview project. That's a $40 million development. $42 million, actually. We broke ground last month. Carmen stepped closer, studying my face as if seeing me for the first time. Isabella, honey, are you saying you own a real estate company? I founded it 5 years ago. We've grown pretty rapidly. How rapidly? Miguel asked, though he seemed afraid of the answer. I considered how much to reveal. These people had spent years treating me like the family failure, and now they were about to learn exactly how wrong they'd been. Our current portfolio is valued at approximately $3.2 billion. The silence returned, deeper this time. Someone's beer can hit the ground with a soft thud. Roberto looked up from the business card, his face now completely pale. $3 billion? Give or take a few $100 million, depending on current market values. But, Sophia stammered, but you live in that tiny apartment. You drive that old car. Because I choose to. When you're building a business, you reinvest profits rather than spending them on lifestyle upgrades. Miguel sat down heavily on the nearest picnic bench. Isabella, are you telling us that while we've been worrying about your career, you've been running a billion-dollar company? That's exactly what I'm telling you. Roberto was still holding my business card, turning it over in his hands as if it might change into something different. Isabella, I need to ask you something and I need you to be completely honest. Okay. Is this real? Are you really that successful? Instead of answering directly, I pulled out my phone and opened my company's website. I handed it to Roberto, showing him the About Us page with my photo and biography. He read aloud, Isabella Martinez, founder and CEO. Ms. Martinez established Pacific Real Estate Group in 2019 with a vision of creating sustainable, community-focused housing solutions. Under her leadership, the company has become one of the fastest-growing real estate firms on the West Coast, with a portfolio spanning 3 states and generating over $200 million in annual revenue. The phone passed from hand to hand as each family member read the same information, their expressions shifting from disbelief to amazement to something that looked like embarrassment. Isabella, Carmen said finally, why didn't you tell us? This was the question I'd been preparing for years. Because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought I had nothing. The words hung in the air like a challenge. What do you mean? Roberto asked, though his voice suggested he already knew. I mean that for 5 years, you've all treated me like the family disappointment. Every gathering someone has a comment about my apartment, my car, my career choices. Everyone has advice about what I should be doing with my life. I looked around the circle of faces, seeing recognition and shame in their expressions. You've all made assumptions about my success based on external markers, the car I drive, the apartment I live in, the clothes I wear. But none of you ever asked about what I was actually building. Miguel looked up from my phone. Isabella, we were trying to help. Were you? Or were you trying to make yourselves feel better about your own success by having someone in the family who was doing worse than you? The question hit like a slap. Roberto actually took a step backward. That's not. Sophia started, then stopped. That's not fair. Isn't it? Miguel, you've mentioned your bank promotion 3 times in the past 10 minutes. Roberto, you started this conversation by lecturing me about getting a real job. Carmen, you offered to help me apply for entry-level positions. All of you have spent years treating me like a charity case. But if you were successful, why didn't you just tell us? Roberto's voice was defensive now. Because successful people don't usually have to announce their success to their family members. Because I thought the people who loved me would assume I was capable of managing my own life. Because I wanted to see if your love was conditional on my apparent status. The silence returned. In the distance, I could see my parents approaching, probably wondering why our conversation had gotten so quiet and serious. Isabella, Carmen said softly, we do love you. Success or no success. Do you? Because it hasn't felt that way for the past 5 years. But you were living so modestly. You never talked about work. You always seemed struggling. I seemed focused. I seemed like someone building something important who didn't need to advertise it to her family. Roberto cleared his throat. Isabella, I owe you an apology. A big one. We all do, added Miguel. I looked at these people, my uncle who'd just spent 10 minutes lecturing me about responsibility, my cousins who'd been offering career advice, my aunt who'd suggested I apply for entry-level jobs. They weren't bad people. They were just people who'd made assumptions and built an entire narrative around those assumptions. I don't need apologies, I said. I need something different going forward. What? Asked Sophia. I need you to start asking questions instead of making assumptions. I need you to trust that I might know something about my own life. I need you to treat me like an equal member of this family instead of a project that needs fixing. My parents had reached our group, and I could see confusion on their faces as they took in the serious expressions around them. What's going on over here? Dad asked. You all look like someone died. Roberto held up my business card. Carlos, did you know your daughter owns a billion-dollar real estate company? My parents looked at the card, then at me, then back at the card. Isabella. Mom's voice was uncertain. Is this true? It's true, Mom. But we thought. Dad started, then stopped. You thought I was struggling. You thought I needed help. You thought I was the family member who couldn't get her life together. My parents exchanged a look that contained years of worry and misunderstanding. Sweetheart, Mom said carefully, if you've been successful all this time, why did you let us worry about you? Because I wanted to know if you believed in me or if you just believed in my apparent success. Dad looked around the group, taking in everyone's shell-shocked expressions. Isabella, we've always believed in you. Have you? Because every phone call has included questions about my career. Every visit has included suggestions about what I should do differently. Every family gathering has included someone offering to help me get a real job. We were just concerned, Mom said weakly. You were embarrassed. Admit it. You were embarrassed to have a daughter who seemed unsuccessful compared to everyone else's children. The accusation hung in the air and I could see the truth of it in their faces. Maybe, Dad said finally. Maybe we were. And now I'm proud of you. But I'm also confused about why you hid this from us. I looked around at all these faces, family members who'd known me my entire life but had never really seen me. I didn't hide it. I just didn't advertise it. There's a difference between keeping something secret and choosing not to make it the center of every conversation. Roberto spoke up again. Isabella, I need to ask you something else. What? The apartment. Her. The clothes. Is all of that part of some kind of test? I considered his question. It started as practicality, When you're building a business, you minimize personal expenses. But yes, over time it became a test. I wanted to see who would respect me when they thought I had nothing. And we failed, Sophia said quietly. You failed to see me clearly. But failure isn't permanent if you learn from it. Miguel looked up from my phone, where he'd been scrolling through articles about Pacific Real Estate Group. Isabella, there's a Forbes article here about you. It says you're one of the top female entrepreneurs under 40. That was published last month. And you didn't mention it? When would I have mentioned it? During one of our conversations about how I need to get my life together. The point landed hard. I could see the impact on their faces. Carmen stepped forward. Isabella, what can we do? How do we fix this? You start by seeing me as I actually am instead of who you think I should be. You start asking about my life instead of offering unsolicited advice. You start treating me like a successful adult instead of a problem that needs solving. Can you forgive us? Roberto asked. I looked at my uncle, this man who'd spent the afternoon lecturing me about responsibility and real jobs, who'd unknowingly been working for my company, who'd treated me like a charity case while I'd been signing his paychecks. Roberto, can I tell you something? Of course. The Harborview project. We're planning 4 more developments just like it over the next 2 years. Your construction company is on our preferred vendor list because you do excellent work. His eyes widened. You mean? I mean that the niece you've been lecturing about getting a real job has been one of your most important clients for the past 6 months. Roberto sat down on the picnic bench next to Miguel looking stunned. Isabella, he said finally, I feel like an idiot. You're not an idiot. You're someone who made assumptions and built conclusions around those assumptions. It happens. But how do we move forward? How do we have a normal relationship after this? I looked around the group at my uncle who'd been condescending, my cousins who'd offered career advice, my aunt who'd suggested entry-level jobs, my parents who'd worried about my future. We start by being honest with each other. No more assumptions, no more unsolicited advice, no more treating anyone like a project that needs fixing. And you? Sophia asked. Will you be honest with us about your life? I'll be more open, yes. But I reserve the right to keep some things private. Success doesn't mean you owe everyone a detailed explanation of your business. Dad stepped forward and hugged me. Isabella, I'm proud of you. I'm sorry it took us so long to see what you'd built. I'm proud of you too, Dad. But I was proud of you before I knew about your success, and I hope you can say the same about me. Over the next hour, the conversation shifted from apologies to genuine curiosity about my work. Family members asked thoughtful questions about real estate development, property management, and entrepreneurship. Roberto wanted to know about my business philosophy. Carmen was fascinated by the challenges of being a young female CEO. Miguel asked about investment strategies and market analysis. It was the most real conversation I'd had with my extended family in years. As the afternoon wound down and people started packing up their folding chairs and coolers, Roberto approached me one more time. Isabella, I have a confession. What's that? When I got the Harborview contract, I told everyone it was the biggest job my company had ever landed. I was so proud of working for Pacific Real Estate Group. I had no idea I was bragging about working for my own niece. I smiled. How does it feel to know your most successful client is the family member you thought needed career guidance? Roberto laughed, but it was a different laugh than the one he'd started the day with, less condescending, more genuine. It feels like I've been an idiot for 5 years. You haven't been an idiot. You've been someone who cared about me but expressed it in the wrong way. Can I ask you something? Sure. What happens now? Do you fire my company because your uncle was a jerk to you? I considered the question seriously. Roberto, your construction company does excellent work. The Harborview project is ahead of schedule and under budget. Why would I fire you? Because I've been treating you like family. You have been treating me like family. It's just that your version of family love included a lot of unsolicited advice and career guidance. And now we have the chance to build a different kind of family relationship. One based on mutual respect and actual understanding of who we each are. As I drove home that evening in my modest Honda Civic, I thought about the conversations that would happen over the next few weeks. Roberto would probably tell his construction crew that his niece owned the company they were working for. Miguel would share the story with his coworkers at the bank. Carmen would probably call every other family member to share the news. But the most important conversation would be the one I'd have with myself about whether keeping my success hidden had been worth it. I'd learned something valuable. My family's love wasn't conditional on my success, but their respect had been. They'd loved me when they thought I was struggling, but they'd treated me like someone who needed fixing. Now we could start over with complete honesty. No more modest apartments chosen for strategic reasons. No more old cars driven to maintain a cover story. No more hiding my achievements to test other people's assumptions. My phone buzzed with a text from Roberto. Isabella, thank you for trusting me with your business. I promise we'll do our best work on every project. I texted back, I know you will. That's why I hired you. The next morning I started looking at new apartments. Ones that reflected my actual financial situation rather than the image I'd been maintaining. It was time to live authentically instead of strategically. But I kept the Honda Civic. Some things weren't about strategy or image. Some things were just about remembering where you came from and staying connected to the person you'd been before success changed everything. Besides, there's something satisfying about pulling up to a $40 million construction site in a 10-year-old car and having everyone treat you with respect because they know who you really are, not what you appear to be. Sometimes the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. Sometimes it's letting them discover they were wrong about you all along.